All right, welcome everyone. It's 2 o'clock in Melbourne, and today we're doing our webinar on what is the biggest source of your calls from online. And it might be a surprise. Hopefully it's a surprise to a lot of you because it's something which we're passionate about and it's an emerging field. And before we get stuck into it, just a couple of housekeeping points. Could those people that can hear okay, just a couple of you just drop a note saying you can hear fine in the chat section. If you haven't used Zoom before, it gives you a pretty clear idea of how the service works. So what I'd like to do during this webinar is, thank you Megan for that, is to get your questions and comments and thoughts, and if the best way to do that is to drop a little note into the chat section. Thank you, Rod. That's terrific. And we'll answer them, or I'll answer them during the webinar if I can. Otherwise, I'll do it afterwards, and we'll have a fair bit of follow-up for you afterwards. And the other thing I'm going to do is switch over to a presentation so you'll be able to see what we're talking about. So, and by the way, this is also being recorded for those people new to the webinar, so you'll get a recording sent to you afterwards, so you can watch that at your own leisure. And on the PetPack website, we record or store all our webinars, so it's a great resource for you if you're interested in learning more about online marketing. So let's get stuck into it, and we will finish at 2:30 or as close to as possible. Thank you. Now I'm just going to share my screen with you. So everyone should be able to see now Google My Business, how to generate new clients with Google GMB. And so the secret's out of the bag. The source of the most phone calls from online for your practice today is Google My Business. Or I must qualify that it can be. And that's if you've set it up correctly and you're running it, putting resources into it, you'll get a fantastic result. We'll have a look at some of those results as we go. But for those of you who are not familiar with GMB or would like a background, I'm going to give a little bit of intro, then I'll talk about what it does and the sorts of things you can do to actually improve the performance. All right, so let's go to, just to make sure everyone can everyone see that blue slide okay? Google My Business. All right, so what is GMB? And I'll refer to Google My Business as GMB. One of the challenges with this particular service, Google My Business, is that its name is changing as much as a conservation department in the Victorian government. A lot. And here are some pictures here of what it actually is. On the left here you can see the full GMB listing, which is basically like a mini website. When displayed, it has obviously pictures which come from the clinic, and has reviews, you can see here, Google reviews, and it's got a whole bunch of options that you can do as a consumer, call, go to the website, and you can also review from here. And if we scroll down on here, you'd see a whole bunch of other information like opening hours and reviews. And we'll talk a bit about reviews in a minute. Reviews are very important. So when people are talking about Google reviews, they're referring to, or the way that reviews are interacted with the public is through Google My Business. Now that wasn't always the way. Google has brought together a whole bunch of services so that they're now formed into Google My Business, but it actually started with Maps. And here's an example of what Google My Business looks like on Maps. So if you're in Google Maps and you're searching for the #1 search term for a vet in the suburb of Eltham, which is in Victoria, the #1 search term is Vet Eltham, or just the word vet, and the Maps tool of the phone knows that you're standing in Eltham. So the first thing that comes up on the map listing is listings about those practices, and you can see this information is being drawn from Google My Business. So Google My Business is very important to mobile phone use. And we know that mobile phone use is generating about 80% of all local business search. So that's why Google My Business is so important. And over here is, to clarify or contrast, is the actual website for the practice. So it's very different. And the reason I put the website here is also to say that the website interacts or integrates with Google My Business strongly. So having a very good website makes your Google My Business service work better. All right. Any questions on that, guys? Someone just drop me a note saying that you can actually see that okay. That'd be great. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. So a little bit about what it is. There's a few some key points here which I'll run through. Your Google My Business listing is often the first thing a Google user sees, particularly on a mobile, which will be over half of all the traffic coming into your business. And when I talk about traffic, of course, I'm talking about online traffic. It can be a lot higher, but over half is coming off a mobile, and maybe a third on top of that will be coming off tablets. So Google My Business is relevant to mobile and tablets, and we often bunch mobile and tablets together as mobile. When it's set up and managed correctly, it can generate 400 calls a month. Now, 400 calls a month might not seem, you might not have a reference point for that, but to put in perspective, a Google My Business listing that's not set up well might generate 50 calls a month. And the inference there is that most practices have a Google My Business listing, but it's not set up or being run properly. So 400 calls a month is what you can achieve. And in relation to a high-performing website, this is 1.5 to 2 times the calls generated from a high-performing website. So we used to focus primarily on the website, but now what we focus on is the integration of the website with Google My Business and AdWords for the optimum result. And today we're focusing just on Google My Business because it generates more calls than anything else. The interesting thing is that it was created and it is controlled by Google. And that's very important to remember, because when we're doing online marketing or making the clinic most visible and effective online, we look at what Google is doing and what they're asking us to do, and we follow those instructions. And the reason for that is because more than 95% of all the traffic will be coming through a Google-controlled asset, which is quite remarkable. And what's happened is, over the years, Google has built trust with consumers. And the end result of that is that the consumers trust what is put forward to them on a mobile screen. And if Google puts up Google My Business, the consumers will act on it. And one of the strong results of that is that consumers, people looking for vet clinics, are trusting the reviews on Google My Business and making a decision to go to a clinic based on that. So the summary of that is, obviously, Google My Business is super important, and your clinic would benefit from you investing effort and time into it to make sure it's working properly. Does that make sense? Any questions? Oh, good. All right. Is it important? Really, another way of saying this is really how has it come to be important, really? And I'll just recap here. Basically, it's evolved from Google Maps. And when Google Maps was invented, I remember when it was invented, I was pretty excited. In fact, a lot of people were pretty excited about it. It was the first time you could get a dynamic map on your phone. I think we've forgotten the significance of that. And we just take for granted that maps are there. And Google's been thinking about how to make that useful. They do various things with it. And one of the things is putting business directories on that. And because the environment or the behavior of consumers is changing very fast from offline search when it comes to local business. So, going back a few years, it was Yellow Pages and other hard copy directories, to moving very quickly to online with desktop and then very quickly to mobile. Google has raced to try and reinvent themselves as they go to be more and more relevant in this changing environment. And they've done a very good job in that, as I said before, most people, when they're searching for a local business, will pick up their phone and go through a Google asset. And because Google controls what you see as a consumer, it will put maps in front of you or ads, often before you see the website. And so that's why if you're not in ads and you're not in Google My Business effectively, often you are not visible, particularly in your surrounding suburbs. A little breakdown there of where the new business calls come from. So website, this is for an optimum performing online environment for a clinic. A website, approximately 200 calls a month. Google My Business, approximately 200 to 400. 400 is the top end, but we have clinics that do more than 400. And AdWords will be about 50. And just a little note about AdWords, you might say, oh, what's the point of having AdWords if you're only getting 50 calls? Well, the really, really important thing about AdWords is you can target specific locations. So a surrounding suburb is the main thing we'll be looking for, where your website and your Google My Business are not showing up strongly. And the big difference, the reason why you can target them with AdWords is because you're paying Google. And so it's a legitimate, immediate response. They're going to stick an ad in that area. Whereas with Google My Business and websites, they're building trust with the consumer by slow growth through good content and reviews. And the more that content and reviews are consistent and grow and are positive, the more Google's going to put that website and Google My Business in front of people. Bear with me for a second here. Just putting my notices on hold. All right, so that's really why it's important. Let's have a little chat about Google reviews. Interesting comment from Ross Bennett in Victoria Point in Queensland. We have new clients choosing to come to us because of our 5-star reviews. And you don't need to have 5-star reviews, but you need to have a lot of good reviews in there, and you need to have reviews that are real, that are engaging, that you respond to, and that show that your community is engaged with your business. And I mention this because most people attending today will not have an active process in their clinic where they're actually garnering reviews. And so that the status quo or the standard situation for practices is they have not put effort into their reviews, and the consumers are coming into their Google My Business listing and looking at them and seeing that they've been neglected, which is a reflection of how that will then impact how they think about your business. Whereas if a consumer comes into a Google My Business setting and maybe they've been referred to you, or they're looking for vet in the area, and they then look at that listing and see that you've got 40 or 50 reviews, 95% of them are 5-star, got a couple of odd ones that are less, and we think it's important that you don't try and doctor these reviews, because you don't need to. You just need to get more of them in there. Then we now know that consumers are using that information to make a decision about coming to you. So this is one of the really, really important reasons why I strongly recommend you put resources into your Google My Business, because you get the biggest leverage from that effort compared to all your marketing efforts. I'll just check. I've just got a question here. So David's asked, how do you actively get reviews? And we'll get to that. Thanks. It's a really good question, David. So the recommendation is to proactively ask your clients to leave a review. And most of your clients will give you a 5-star review. And if you don't ask them, they won't leave a review. It's quite interesting. So if you just leave it alone and let people do their thing, you'll get a few negatives and a few positives, and you might have 5 reviews, you might have 10 reviews. And it doesn't really give the consumer much of an idea. It just looks neglected. It doesn't mean they think you're a bad guy, just thinks it's neglected. So, and then the last point, there's lots of good reviews dilute any negative reviews. So it's really important to think about, and this is coming to David's question about how do you actively get reviews, to think about how to get lots of reviews in there. Now, the simple thing is ask your clients. And then the more complex thing is, well, how do we set up a process to ask clients? And there are a bunch of practices. There'll be practices here today who are doing it. Clients with PetPack who are setting up programs to actively ask their clients. And so just to give you some, so I'm not going to go into today how you go through what sort of processes there are. I might mention a couple of sort of broad frameworks, but that's for another time. The detail, in fact, if you want to talk to me about that off the webinar, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But basically, if you ask a client to give you a review, and the best time to ask them is when they've just been in to see you, then almost all your clients are like, of course I'll give you a review. And you can say things and look, you know, it's really important to us that we reflect to the community what our clients think of us. So could you please give us a review? And you'll find that most people love doing it. In fact, you know, the feedback we get from clinics that do it is that when they see those clients the next day or the next week or down at the shops there, that's what the conversation's about, you know. Oh, you know, thanks very much, Bob, for giving us that review. It's fantastic. Oh, no, what else can I do? And a really important part, which you'll see in a minute, is actually responding to those reviews as well. So when I'm talking about resources, I'm talking about making sure you've got staff and a process in place in your practice, which will take some investment, obviously, in time, in asking clients, and then when those reviews come in, responding to those reviews. And if anyone here, there will be more people here responding and actively getting Facebook reviews than there are Google My Business. The same process applies. And so if you are doing both, it makes a lot of sense to have the same person or the same process for both. For PetPack clients, we provide them with a specific link that you can send to those pet owners or those clients of yours, which makes it very easy for them to leave that review, because one of the blocks for practices is they think it's too hard to get these reviews, you know, from the consumer point of view. All right, so let me look at this. Okay, so Megan's got a good thing here. Just an example of how some people are doing it. Megan says they're actually having stickers designed currently to put into sample packs asking for reviews. And, you know, if I talk sort of briefly about a highly sophisticated but effective process that one practice is running, the process is that after every visit there is a feedback email that goes out, which is not about Google reviews, it's just a general feedback email, which is ask the person to give them a score between 1 and 10. And if the response is between 1 and 7, then a staff member gets on the phone and follows that person up. And if it's between 8 and 10, approximately, then they get a follow-up email saying, that's awesome, and would you like to give us a Google review? And so, you know, you don't need to go to that sophistication. I would suggest if you haven't been doing this, you just start asking your clients. Just a little bit of update on recent changes. This is an example of how Google My Business is changing fast and why we recommend you have an expert partner on board to help you deal with this. Post an event promotional notice is new, and some of our clients, our practices at PetPack are doing these actively, where you can actually use Google My Business as a way to distribute your content. So you know how we encourage practices to put content on their website and then the same message, distribute it through the email newsletter and distribute it through Facebook at the same time? Well, the same principle applies to Google My Business. Let's get that message on there as well. So to reiterate, the benefit of that is that from a client perspective, if I'm a client of your practice, I'll see that message in multiple channels and it sinks in a lot better. And also it helps Google understand what you're doing, and so it can put the Google My Business listing in front of the right people. The second one on that list is online booking. Really, really important for practices and a growing area. I think many, many more practices will be doing online booking in the relatively near future. Google My Business just popped up one day and said, we're putting online booking facilities into Google My Business. And it's really important that if you're in this area as a practice with online booking, you know this is available. And so that just gives you a much broader channel for your online booking. So if you've got a person coming into Google My Business and potential new client and there's an online booking appointment button there, it's a lot easier for them to make that appointment. You know, one of our roles is actually just let our clients know when these changes happen. Some of these changes are obviously not applicable to everyone, so not everyone's doing online booking, but you need to be told that they're there. Let's have a look. Now, I was going to swap screens and show a... All right, so let's have a look here. This is a report from Google My Business, and this runs in the back end of Google My Business. It's called Google Insights, and the Google Insights reporting is becoming incredibly useful and sophisticated. And you can see here, I've just taken a sample of one tiny section of it, but it really, from my perspective, shows the important things. You can see this is a period of 1 month. And let's start at the top here. Of all the visits that came to Google My Business, all the people, 155 of them visited the clinic website. Now, that tells me that there's a lot of people who are new to the practice and they're looking for, confirmation that it's a place to go. So this is where someone might have recommended the practice. They're now looking it up on their phone, because 80% of those people will be looking it up on their phone. They come across Google My Business. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. I want to learn more. They click on the website and they go and have a look, and then they will make a decision about whether they ring you or not. That's a lot of people. 77 request directions. That is most likely existing clients who've got a booking, or someone who's first time's got a booking. They're actually finding how to get there. They're on the way there. But look at this number, 452 calling. Unbelievable. It's actually the highest number of any pet pack clinic in Australia and New Zealand. 452 calls in 1 month. So if anyone's got higher than that, I'd love to know about it, but that's extraordinary. So that's a very, very, very high number, and it just reinforces. I think my big message here is get on board with Google My Business, because it'll do massive things for your business. All right, so let's go to back to that Prezzo again. All right. So this is what we do for practices. We work in partnership with the clinic to grow the Google My Business performance, and we call it Optimize Google My Business. So some of the steps we go through will be claiming and verifying the listing on your behalf, and the very, very high number of Google My Business listings that have not been claimed and have not been verified. And it's a particularly important process from Google's perspective to understand that this is real, this business is real, and then, oh, okay, it's real, so we can start promoting this, meaning Google thinks I can start promoting this. Remove and merge any duplicate listings. The origins of Google My Business were that Google took directory listings from other directories. So do you remember when vets used to list their own names in Yellow Pages? Well, the hangover from that is that a lot of Google My Business listings are ineffective, because you've got, say, 4 vets in a practice. They've all got their own listing, but none of them have had anything done with them. And also they're not useful to the consumer, because consumers don't look up those people. So what we want to do is bring all those together to create one for the actual clinic. Then, of course, we ensure all the details are complete, correct, and up to date. And that's a relatively big job at the start, but it's also an ongoing job. So when things change, it's really important that we make sure that those are kept up to date. So it might be a good example is Easter holiday times. Consumers will expect those to be correct. Many practices don't keep those up to date, and so it just causes confusion and frustration amongst pet owners or clients. We're not all small animal practices here today, apologies. And then there's a really strong push by Google to put images into the system, so we select and make sure we've got the best images possible and get them in there. Then we provide an assessment on your review process, and then implement a plan so you can actually manage those reviews effectively. So for instance, if you have a negative review, which is normal, and we've done, if you want to learn more about negative reviews and handling them, please look at our webinar on the website. But negative reviews are actually a very important part of the whole process. We'll help you manage those. And then finally, we keep abreast of the changes that Google makes. So for instance, online booking. Who knows what they're going to come up with in the next 6 to 12 months? I've got no idea. We need to know about it though, as it comes along. So a bit about reviews, just a summary of our negative reviews webinar the other day, which is much more complex. So basically always respond. And, there are a bunch of practices who do a great job of this. Thanks, Barry, for that. Really appreciate it. Good to see you. It's really important for not just the clients, but also the new people looking at those lists, as I mentioned before. And we will let you know when there's a problem. because just from experience, it's really helpful that we actually know about it and tell you about it and help you, because often you get into a flat spin, which is totally reasonable because you're not doing this every day. Yeah, just a general thing. When responding, always be helpful and never angry. Fair point. This is a bit of an example of the email that we give to our clients when they want to ask their pet owners to leave a review. You can see it's very straightforward. There's a please review us, your review, blah, 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 stars, and put some notes there in a photo. As opposed to saying to them, oh, just give us a Google review, and they walk out the door, they don't know what you're talking about. So if there's one tip, it's really helped to email this out to people. So from our measurements, we'll grow your calls from GMB somewhere between 20 to 40 new calls a month. And if you work out the additional revenue, it's about $5,000 additional revenue a month just from Google My Business. So it shows you why it's so important to jump on board with that. If you are interested in using PetPack, the optimized Google My Business service is $240 a month. And that's on a 48-month plan. And we have shorter plans available. And that will give you those results we're talking about. If you would like to learn more, please call us. The number's there, or email us. And in fact, you can reply to the webinar email. That's a good way to do it. If you have any other questions, I'd love to hear them, or comments. I'd just like to ask if anyone has any other questions. We're finishing up a little bit early, which is fine. Early is better than late, I think. Thank you, Megan, for your comments. I appreciate that. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, guys. Well, I think we might wrap it up. Thanks very much for joining me, and thanks for showing your interest. Please, let us know if we can help you. Send through any messages, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. And we will put this on. You'll get an email with a recording of this too. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye.